welcome to this episode of our Thriving Tribe, the Zoom Room sessions. I'm David Francis Moore.
I'm Juliette Harvey.
And today we're with MASER, visual artist. Hey MASER, how are you going?
Hello, how are you?
He is a visual artist. He is the founder of Atelier MASER, which is an exhibition gallery space, studio space and an incubation space for emerging Irish talent. And he's also the co-founder of Flow State, which is a bespoke lifestyle brand. Excuse me. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I consider myself an art professional, or professional is such a heavy word, isn't it? I don't like to take a professional role because I think maybe when you start labeling yourself as that, there could be blockers there with becoming a novice and learning and stuff like that. And to be creative, I think you always have to have that window open, don't you, to keep learning and keep growing and stuff like that. And so I'm definitely, if I look at the idea of being a professional artist, I would still be very, very at the start of that, very, very infant years of being a professional artist. And luckily enough, you know, if you want to become a professional artist, I think you got a lot of years. You know, some of the greats only started rocking it in the 60s and 70s. So I'm all right. It's my birthday in 2 days. I'm 39, so I still got a bit of time. But I recognized when I was an artist, you know, and so much of that was when I was younger, was become a graffiti writer, because you didn't probably feel as vulnerable using the language as being an artist, because I probably started expressing interest in that when I was probably, you know, early teens, drawing and doodling and things like that, and then I found graffiti. I fell in love with that and that subculture, and sort of nurtured all the things that I love. Being a mischievous young boy from Dublin and exploring the city and getting to spray paint and hang out with like-minded people. So that was my way in, I think, to art, you know, and how I loved it. And then, so I held on to graffiti for a lot, and graffiti is like, loosely describing, it's like abstract typography, the schooling of letter form. So I did all that, but I wasn't, after a while, sort of wasn't getting enough out of that, you know. It wasn't fulfilling a lot of the creative urges that I had. So I put the letters aside and then just focused on the art, and that sort of opened up a whole other avenue for me, and quite liberating then to sort of, I had the confidence with age then as well to say as an artist, I'm an artist. And so that wasn't until, you know, I was a creative and a graffiti writer and a street artist, whatever we call us nowadays. But that wasn't probably until, you know, early 20s. You know, I went to study visual. I went and did fine art, and it didn't suit me at the time, and I dropped out. And then I went back to study visual communications, and that really lent itself well to what I was doing, because in some way, your design layouts, understanding of color and form, and amalgamated quite well with graffiti. So yeah, that was the sort of the avenue I took, you know. Then yeah, the professional. Well, when you get your first paycheck, I don't know how you gauge how you become a professional artist. You always are, and it depends on who's looking at you, you know. So that's quite a subjective question. There's plenty of motivators. It really depends on the day, the year, my mood. It can be the fear of not going back to where you were. That can be a good motivator. It can be curiosity. I definitely have a curious mind, always investigating, you know, and that's entwined in my normal day. I don't sit down and go, I have to sketch for 4 hours. The investigation is always there. It's always happening while I'm day to day looking around. You can look at things in layouts and compositions, or you can look at conversations and how they will translate to relationships of color and form. So it's always there, really. I will consider myself very ambitious and driven, and you know, I don't know the deep psychological reasons for that. But I would say it's it's a lot to do, you know, being influenced by people that have been surrounded, that you've been around. So luckily I've had some great mentors in my life, and they've sort of shown me good work practice and ethic, and how if you nurture that, you'll then get more ideas going and stuff like that. But it influences come like through the work. It depends on the body of work then as well, you know. And so I had a large exhibition there in London last year, and a lot of that was based on my time when I lived in London, and sort of how I wasn't really built for that city, and through my sort of self-awareness, and I sort of became aware of that and how it caused anxiety. And so I started looking at things to alleviate anxiety, and that was like, you know, in a very simple way, and it was looking at plants. And so I started getting these plants, different sort of like English ivy, aloe vera plants, these sort of things that supposedly help anxiety. Then started drawing those, because, you know, you're looking at things in front of you and influenced by them, and that sort of got intertwined into my work then. So that was a inspiration there. Then you know, if I go back to a project 10 years ago, Damien Dempsey, I worked on a project with him called They Are Us. I painted a lot of murals around the city. He was a big influence for me, helped, you know, he was a coach in some way for like a lot of young men and women, I think, especially from Dublin. So he gave me a bit of guidance through his music, and I sort of wanted to show that and communicate that message. And then I saw that social engagement with the city and how people all participated and got together, either buying the work or sharing the work, and how that rewarded that. And that continued then another narrative about like communicating with a city, and that led on to me building large installations. And so it's not one, it's continue rolling on and rolling on and rolling on, you know. I think that's it. It's very hard to explain. Like, people sort of ask you questions like that. Sorry, the doggy there. People try to ask you questions like that, but like words are very linear. Yeah, like work is sort of abstract and scrambled, and so you can't really articulate it at times. Like, you know, emotive, you can't sometimes express emotions. You know, emotions are there and they're feelings, and you can't put them into words. And I think sometimes that's the same with art, you know. Collaboration is key, because you want to be surrounded by people who are like-minded and motivate you and that you respect, and the opportunity to literally hang out with them as well as then get to work with them. And, you know, you're in a world where, you know, if you're a visual artist or whatever sort of artist you definitely feel like you're orbiting on the periphery a little bit. You're not fully fitting into a certain degree. So when you meet someone else who can speak our language, you know, you want to talk a lot to that person. And so it definitely, I've collaborated and with a lot of artists, and you learn from them, and even down to how they work and their work ethic and their lifestyle, and how that will influence their work. You know, I've learned a lot about that over the years, and sort of unfortunately how a lot of visual artists, including myself, for certain periods of time are quite destructive. And I don't know if that's to do with self-worth or visual arts not being respected. I don't know, there's something to that. But then I look at other artists who I like really admire, and their work ethic and what things are in place there that get them to that space. And it might be healthy life habits and people they surround themselves with, things like that, you know. But then I've also created spaces myself where I want to nurture good relationships and maybe facilitate and help and learn from that too. So I have that with a gallery space, and you know, and I introduce artists, other artists, or sort of give them the shortcuts and certain things. So that in some way, if I'm hosting a show, that in some way is still a collaboration of sorts. Over the years, like you know, I've been sort of painting for over 20 years. So there's been loads of these hubs and incubation spaces and whatnot. And you sort of have to create your own, I think, a little bit. And then they cross over. So if you look at online and those spaces there, and how we all communicate now and through social media channels, primarily Instagram, and how we chat there and share, and can look inside, it's almost like look inside people's studios that we weren't able to do 10 years ago. And then down to creating these spaces. But like primarily most of my career is based outdoors, you know, painting murals and doing stuff like that. And that engagement has been a lot of learning. There was a lot of, there was community and for your peers, and you're not almost aware of the environment that you're in. That could be age as well. But when I sort of had that realization a little bit, it added definitely a big another layer of responsibility to what you're doing, because you realize it's a shared space. So you're speaking to other people and kind of, you know, you're almost like people have their routines of walking through the city, and then you've just suddenly changed the landscape. And there's a responsibility to that, I think, if you want to take responsibility. So those spaces there have been quite important to me, like sort of engaging with people that I don't know and they don't know me, but we know each other through my work. And that's developed on over the years to then do more socially responsible work and then be able to add another layer to it to give back. I can't help but think, yeah, just the physical space, that's outdoors, and then the indoor gallery spaces, you know, I'm in a weird position with all that, because our subculture, yeah, it's getting a lot of notoriety in the last few years and popularity, but like we've been humming around for years and not many galleries wanted us or anything like that. Couldn't see the worth in it, because it's public art and it's free. But it's definitely like a big push in it now. You know, we're all seem to going indoors, which is great. But we haven't been a part of that artist community or culture as much, I feel. And even with the design world, I study graphic design, visual communications, and you wouldn't bring up the fact that you did graffiti or street art. It wasn't really respected. Now I think it's one of the biggest influences for a lot of those design places, and artists are bringing in the mediums of spray paint into their work and taking influence from the city and graffiti and all that. So yeah, it's a weird one for me. And these sort of questions that I've never been really asked before, so it's hard to sort of delve into it like that. I probably need a bit more time to focus on it a bit more, you know. But then, you know, when you're painting a public space and you're outdoors, they're almost like billboards as well to your work. Like people get to know it. Like when you're working in a studio environment that I work in now quite a lot, you are locked away, and then and people don't really see your work. It's hard to showcase it, and I think that has helped me with my career. Like, you know, and then the use of social media—that's the window into a studio now for people's practices, as people can see in through social media and that opportunity. Yeah, for sure. It's sort of like you're the all round perfect artist if you're able to do all them, and like be but like I couldn't take no quick enough. But vision, like, yeah, creativity is obviously, you need to be creative, but I think a vision and ambition, you know, drive are as important, if not more important, I think, you know, to really, because you can be the most talented person and then just paint one paint in a year. That's not worth shit, like, unless your paintings take a year. But like self-awareness, that's what an artist really is. And I don't speak for myself, but like the more self-aware I am, you're responding to your environment and your situations and yourself in those spaces. So the more self-aware you are, I think you can just really do better work that's more responsive to whatever it is that motivates you. Motivation, as well as, like, that's what I just said, like, that's learning through experiences. It's all sort of all tying into that same sort of thing that I think all the time, and that's that self-awareness part, you know. And I don't really know how else you're meant to learn besides through experiences. And I'm a visual artist, so I wouldn't be, as I said, I don't sit down and sketch for 4 days or study so much art history or techniques or stuff like that. I'm responding quite emotively to a lot of stuff. If you need to learn technically, yeah, I'll spend time doing that, but also not too long. You can just sort of get with it too. So yeah, that long list that you sent, it's like, it depends on the person, the situation you're in. Like, you know, if you're talking about your work being, like, let's say, ethically responsible or socially responsible, that really depends on the person they're in. Like that in some way is like a luxury or privilege, I think, for a certain artist. Like, you can't be, if you're fucking putting out fires or lost in that gunsmoke of, you know, trying to produce a painting that someone might buy, or like you might get this show, and like you'll scrap and do whatever you can to make that happen. So sometimes certain at that list, sometimes things might have to be compromised a bit, but the ideal goal will be yet to get to the end where we're able to tick off all those attributes. I'm sort of allergic to the word entrepreneur. Like, you meet just a lot of fucking, I have met a lot of dickheads over the years, and they throw that word around, and gets a bit exhausting. And like, I don't really know what an entrepreneur is. Like, you could label me one, I guess, but I'm just a dickhead. Just like visual artists are entrepreneurs, I guess. And I think like the first time I saw entrepreneurial streak would definitely be, if you mean like to be self-motivated, not work for someone, yeah, it's quite important, because you definitely are on that lonely road on your own for a while. And I think to do that, you have to remove what I learned was, I labeled myself as an artist for years, and inherently you just think of the struggle, you know, and I was like, what if I just remove that, and I'm not struggling, I'm not mentally labeling myself as that. And then I thought more about it as well. I was like, well, I'm a painter. What if I'm not a painter? And I can be cross-disciplinary and do all these different things because I'm a creative, which is a looser title. And then that sort of put me more in this position of entrepreneurial position, where I can then use my visual language or this skill set that I have and apply to other things that can be more entrepreneurial, you know. So I'm not just now a fine artist that's broke. And so if you need to use that label to help you break those boundaries and do that, I think most artists that I know have that entrepreneurial streak, and it's motivated, it's vision to work for yourself, and because you have to believe in your own product a bit first before anyone else will, and that takes a lot of just go, and then hopefully people catch on to it a bit, or else you're just going to have to work within a system, and the systems are there and they're great, you know. If like people want to get government funding and stuff like that, or you go work for a creative agency and become a creative director. But a lot of the artists that I know that have exhibited with me are on that sort of lonely quest a bit, and there's definitely an entrepreneurial streak there for them. Time is like, there's different parts to it. So I used to value my time through my 20s, and probably being a little bit destructive and flippant with it. And I think that's down to probably not valuing myself enough. I value my time now because I realize it's a very valuable commodity, and I want to, you know, I almost like unhealthily sometimes put a little bit too much pressure on myself to get stuff done, and sort of, you know, and the inner voice give out to myself a little bit. If I'm not being productive, or if I'm hungover and I'm wasting a day, or, you know, set goals. But then, you know, I'm developing on from that. I've tried to then practice a bit more patience with myself. When it comes to then time, like evidence sort of, I would compartmentalize it a bit in terms of business and painting, and I'd be like, oh, you need to paint this amount of time to be a great artist. Or you would think, again, it's then this linear mindset where you think, oh, people in business mightn't really understand visual artists so much because they might see them going out for fucking smoke every 10 minutes and chatting for ages to go for a drink. But if the person is similar to me, you're always clocked on, you're always thinking. It's just, so if you put it in context of a painting, like a great painting that I might take someone a month to do, let's say an average of painting will take me a week to paint. 90% of that is a lot of chin wagging and thinking and walking away from it, and then the 10% of it is actually executing it. So for someone that doesn't do that and isn't in that creative practice, it's sort of hard for them to value it. But it's fucking like a game of chess a little bit, like, you know, how often do you move the piece in comparison to how much you think about it? So you really need to sort of break that structure of what they have in their mind of going in that 9 to 5, and if you send out 100 emails and you send a amount of reports, so that's productive. It's a different way of working, and it's hard for anyone to really understand that until you do it, like, you know. But I value it quite a lot, and I would get, and I know that through error, because I will push it and force it, but like, I need to paint, and I'll just fucking ruin a painting, you know, and I've spent loads of time previous to that thinking. So I you know, I was going to paint there, and it's like 25 to 3 now. I'll paint maybe at 5 o'clock, and so this that, yeah, and then yeah, it's a multi-layered conversation that you have with yourself all the time, but time is definitely it's different, and you have this sense of immediacy when you want to produce, because your mind works faster than real life as well. So you'd be painting a piece and you're already onto your third piece, so you're battling with time there as well. It's a tricky one. I've nothing to put it in context to, because like, I haven't been anything else. So I could say yes or no. And then if you're expecting society to nurture you and help you, you know, I always sort of tell the younger artists, there's no cavalry coming over the hill to save you. Like, you're there and you've got to fucking sort out yourself. And I think that's with everything in life, you know, unless there's different jobs you can do that. Yeah, you just work your way up, but got to sort of, you're out there on your own a little bit, and that can be terrifying, but then also really, really liberating and rewarding, because then you become taking responsibility for yourself. When you do that, like, when you get a reward, it's even more rewarding, you know. You like, I fucking did that myself. It wasn't handed to me. Top 3 skills, definitely having a modest approach, so not fucking knowing all, and it opens the door then to learning loads more, and always reaching out and talk to me like a dummy. I don't get that, like that. That's how I, you know, inviting people in who are professionals, removing ego, like that's essential, I think. And I think it is a real blocker when I meet artists, and they have to have this bravado with me. I'm like, oh, dude, you're holding yourself back there for a few years now until you dismantle this and get rid of this shit. Like, you know, make yourself vulnerable. So vulnerability, that'd be number 1. It's a great thing to have. Other things then is the willing, curiosity, the willing to learn, you know, and then, yeah, as I said, not being like a fine artist, I just paint, like taking ownership of your business, to then like understand your business, and like I've zero interest in accountancy, but I've an interest in it when it can help my creative practice to grow and help other people grow. So now I have a very, very keen interest in VAT returns and end of year tax returns in October and all this shit, you know. Another asset then would be just like, I know I probably should be saying painting, or like, they're just skills that you can acquire. I think, you know, you have to have the first drop, obviously, but just that motivation and just real drive, and it'll fluctuate at times. But if you really understand yourself and your purpose and why you're here and what motivates you, and then, as you said, you value time, it's a key motivator to like leave an impression, you know. And then you think about the impression you leave, and maybe you want it to be a positive one. And if you're doing work and that's out there socially, then you want to leave that's, so, you know, be socially conscious. And so all these sort of things are very important, you know, foundations, I think. Like, I my first experience with fine art wasn't great. I think hindsight's probably just timing. Well, it didn't suit me. I didn't like how some of the tutors spoke to students. I think creators are quite sensitive without people realizing that, like, we're sensitive souls. So the language used, I think other things, like you're being thrown out then into The art part is the fun part, and that's the creative part, and we should really, really enjoy that. But don't let it be buried and lost or limited by the fear of having to work in a world that to grow. So I would love. We were taught fine art and art history and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess it's just that's important a bit, but I think future thinking is also very important. So we're talking about work and stuff like that, like introducing sort of more meditation approaches and self-worth and stuff like that. But then also just mechanics. I'd love if I was in college, and probably wouldn't have liked it at the time, but there was a half day of just accountancy or business planning or that sort of shit is like really, really important. I had to just figure all that out myself and learn all the mistakes, but also then ask people I knew. And it was great, but I could have took a few shortcuts in that if that practice is brought in. And I don't know if that's in college now or what, but it wasn't when I was there, when I did graphic design or fine art. They weren't there. So it's just like, yeah, just like that's one, the creative is one part, but in this environment that we live in now, and if you're an entrepreneur or artist work for yourself, it's the part that you want to get to all the most. That's the rewarding part, and then you got to get through all this fucking other shit. Like, so we should be coached on that a little bit more, I think. I've never got any public funding. Like, I've done a few like, what you call it, applications, grants, and I haven't got them. And again, I'm not an academic, so like it's exhausting the amount of energy you put into that, and then you get rejected. Like after a while, it's a bit of a deterrent. Where I have learned to doing commercial projects and sort of how to sort of like probably work my while if I could just do this commercial job or stuff like that. So I can't really lend advice on what you can give, but I would say open up your pool of people you know. Don't be just thinking art, like go back to basics on it. And if you were to like, okay, I can't get funding, well, I'm sure you 3 degrees away from there's someone that would be interested in art, or what's my skill and how can I apply it to, I'm just making something up right now, but if you're, you know, your uncle's, like your uncle might be in advertising or something, or a PR agency, and you know how to do backdrops or set design, there's some sort of stuff there. Like, so just being really, really ambitious and driven. And that was me years ago. When I left college, I was back working in a skate shop for a few years, and then I was doing little Nixers, window displays, any sort of opportunity I could paint. And I loved doing their windows because it meant I didn't have to be on the floor in the shop. But I started doing windows, and then this PR agency came in, and they were looking for scouting for locations to launch some product. I think it was like a PSP or PlayStation or something like that. And I just waffled that I could do it, and I got that job. And then with that PR agency, I realized then, I was like going, hold on, so if there's commercial projects here, and let's say I want to work at Nike or something like that, I don't know how to get to Nike, but these PR agencies, marketing agencies have the pool of all these people here. So I'm going to do up a lovely PDF of all my paintings and this window I did, and any sort of, you know, I used to paint little sign writings for bars or clubs, whatever, put them all in PDFs and sent them to all the PR agencies in Ireland, just with a cover letter, just sort of saying, I'm available to do any sort of work. And that's sort of how it started, like that. Like, and you do one job, and the key thing really is the relationship you build with them, because the piece at the end is just a bookmark, but like people remember the sort of whole journey you had with them, you know, the working relationship. So if you're easy to work with and you get on well, and you know, don't compromise yourself too much, but you're willing to always give a little bit more, that's going to lead on to more work, you know. And again, you know, and I can't speak for them because I haven't been in a position, but I know it's very rewarding to get that check that you've worked for. Maybe it might be a little bit more rewarding than getting money just handed to me. And I have been in that position too, where I've lived in the States and I've had a patron, and it's an amazing stepping stone for me. But there's a different sort of reward feeling when you paint for 12 hours and then you get 50 quid or whatever it is. Administrative part is paying for my practice. Like, I wouldn't be getting paid for it Like it's a part of it to have, like you got to do all that sort of behind the scenes. I call it like front of shop and back of house. And you got to really, like, you know, I'll be talking to artists and I'll be like, so what do you with that? And he's like, yeah, I sold, or she sold 6 paintings. I'm like, and then I'm trying to investigate a little bit more and be like, okay, you gotta, you know, start getting onto the revenue here because they're going to get onto you soon. So that's just as important. Lucky now I'm in a position where there was years where I was playing, I had wearing a lot of hats, and it really cuts into your creative process. Like you lose your flow, you know, that way. And so you'd have to stop, but then do invoices or do a lot of emails, sorry, and meetings and different stuff, or scouting, like just a lot of time wasting at certain times. So I was juggling that, and you just do it. You just do it. And again, it's a part of it. It's like, we can also look at it as like a welcome break from painting, and then you really want to get back painting for those few hours that you have, or being creative in any process. Luckily now I'm in a position where I've employed someone, Martina works with me, and she's my studio manager, and she manages my projects too. So she takes a lot of that load off, and it really, really helps then for me to take all that time and put it back into my practice. And I've been painting for years. I've only employed someone last year. And then I can see my flows back now. I'm creative, and I'm painting way more. So that's a great part of the team. Even though the team's just me and her, but yeah, it's all part and parcel of it. Like, be really patient with yourself. And I know, you know, we have our outer voice and we've got our inner voice in our head, and that fucking voice can be very toxic. And I know for myself, he's a real critic, and I used to think that voice was me for years, and it's very, very damaging to my mental health. So I'd advise us artists, if they're sort of beating themselves up, to just know that they're young, they got plenty of time, and to just sort of separate themselves from that voice a little bit. Because again, like, we are very sensitive people, and you have to be a visual artist to really like get to the core of why you want to do it. And you're born with a lot of self-awareness. That can be quite dangerous if it goes the wrong way. So don't be worrying about other people either, all that bollocks. Like, I'm a victim of it too. Like, I should be doing that, I shouldn't be doing that. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, so be patient and motivated at the same time. If you have that lovely balance, you'll be fine.
Thank you so much. This has been the Zoom Room Sessions. This has been MASER. MASER, if anyone wants to find out any more details about your work, what you do, what's your website, what's your handles?
www.maserart.com. That's my website. And Instagram, I'm on Instagram all the time. There's a little link there as well, at MASERART. That's it. That's it, pretty much. Stay there all the time.
Well, listen, thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.